Welcome. I'm Riley Karsh.
I'm Tova Kopan.
We are thrilled to bring you the We Go Boldly podcast.
Let's talk big burning questions, life changes, and maybe a bit of personal business.
Let's be bold and brave together. Are you ready?
I am. Here comes the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to We Go Boldly, the podcast. We are so very happy to have you with us. Today is the last day of our season 8, and that feels super weird to me that we've made it all the way to the end of the season. I feel like the season could go on for, I don't know, decades. But before we dive into our topic, I will, as always, welcome my co-host Tova to the show. How are you today, Tova? What's going on?
I am great. I just was mid-yawn and I was like trying to squeak it out before you said, "Hey, how's it going?"
It's fair.
I am, good. It's the summer. I have lots of thoughts about the summer. Mostly good. Mostly good. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's a weird week. I think that's what I'm struggling with in answering this question, because we are recording this the week before you're listening to it, we hope. And it's the holiday week. And I don't totally know what day of the week it is.
Yes.
I also have kind of felt like it was Friday every day, but then I was like, no, but it's not Friday. Tomorrow's Friday. And I was like, no, it's only Wednesday. Tomorrow's not Friday. I mean, that's kind of what has happened all week.
Yeah.
So I'm excited that it is in fact Friday, and perhaps by Monday I will know it's Monday.
You'll have reacclimated to the days of the week.
Yeah. So I'm that's kind of where I am. I think that's why I can't answer clearly, like, how are you doing? It's like, I don't know.
It's a super weird week. I was away on vacation for the holiday with my family. We go away for every July 4th, and it was great. I had a fantastic time. Kids were great. Everything was super fun. Place we go, we love. And then I got back and I was like, oh, what do I do? Like, how do I reintegrate into society? I was gone for 4 days and I was just like so checked out for the 4 days that when I got back, I was very confused about, how to live my life. Which seems like a real deep and meaningful thought for having been gone for 4 days, but I'm just saying that's where I am. And we were talking before we started recording today, like, I feel like there's an elephant on my chest, like something is sitting on me and squishing me and I can't get a deep breath. And maybe I'm anxious, maybe I'm tired, maybe I just want to go back on vacation. I don't know, all of it, but it's a weird feeling. So,
I think it's a little of each.
Yeah.
At least for me.
Yes.
And I will also say, and I think we need to acknowledge this, and maybe it's this because I'm in sales when I'm not, but it's not just being in sales. Like, you and I like to have goals throughout the year, and we like to look like, okay, we're halfway through the year. And like, we're halfway through the year, and I haven't even shared with anybody my word of the year. I mean, I've shared it with you, but like my word of the year. And I'm like, wow, have I narrowed down the things I want to do in 2023? And from a sales perspective, it's really like a race to the end of the year now.
Yeah.
Mainly because it's not really like the next 8 weeks. It's hard to get anything done because people are on vacation. But then we all know how cool and casual and calm September is. And so it's like the next, and so I have to really actively remind myself that I'm not in a time of busyness. I mean, we're busy because all my children are playing baseball, and it's like condensing an entire season of baseball into 5 weeks.
Right.
But I'm like, everything else doesn't have to be busy. It's just mentally, my mind's like, okay, so we have to get this done, and we have to get this done. And now I'm just like totally like overflowing information here, which I guess I always do. Like with Prime Day coming up.
Yes, right. It's stressful.
I'm like working on my Christmas shopping list.
Yep.
And so I'm like, okay, well, like, because I would love to get as much done as possible of that just now.
Yeah.
And I recognize that some things for Prime Day are useful and some of them are not, but it's like, okay, but if I can throw stuff in the cart and if I get a notification that it's on sale over the next week, like buy it. And then it's like, okay, I want a Ring doorbell. And but then there's so many choices and it's so
Yeah.
overwhelming,
Yes.
which is why I still don't have a Ring doorbell. So I think there's just a lot happening in this time of year, even if it's just like I have like literally no plans for this week. We're recording on a Friday and I've literally not a plan this weekend.
Yeah, so I don't know, and this is, I think, applicable to the topic today. So just to get us
100%.
on track, the topic today is sort of a recap of unlocking what is holding you back. And then we're going to flow that into our next full season, where we're going to ask you to think about a question that I was asked by an amazing woman who I'm hoping we can get on the show while we were away at a conference. So I know I'm being vague, but before I dive into all that, I don't know that it is seasonal in the sense of like it's more busy right now, or I'm feeling more rushed right now, or any of those things. I feel very distinctly that the older I get, the more rushed everything feels. And it's not the sense that, like, oh no, I'm going to die tomorrow and I won't have done all these things, right? It's not that morbid, but it is that feeling of like, okay, I don't actually have another, 90 years to figure these things out, which, when you think about it, is such a long time. But the closer you get, like, I'm going to be 45 this year. And the closer I get, the faster things seem to be moving. And it's not particularly rational, right? Like time hasn't changed, but it has in the sense that I feel the pressure to achieve more and more and more and more, and to accomplish more and more and more and more, right? And like as if time is running out. And it's certainly not running out. But I do think a lot of us fall into that. I don't know if it's a trap or if it's a reality or what it is, but I think a lot of us fall into that. And it happens for me anyway. It's been happening since I turned 40, I think. And it's been progressively less stabilized since then.
Well, it's funny. It's funny that you're saying all this. I mean, I've always had that pressure. I don't know if it's like the result of being like a gifted kid, where it's like you have to do
Yeah.
everything, you have to be the best, whatever.
Yeah.
But what I've noticed this year is as much as I want to do this summer, I'm also like, meh, there'll be another summer soon. Like the last year felt like it went by so fast. Like I feel like I really was just recovering from the previous summer, like up until about 3 months ago. So it's like, well, look at what I can get done this summer because the next one it'll be here in no time.
Yeah, it's a bit of a catch 22, right? Because you're like, you become, at the older you get, the more you get like what you were just saying, where you're like, I can make more money next week, or I can do these things next summer, or whatever it is. You become a little bit more patient, I guess, and understanding of things. But at the same time, it feels like time is going faster. Like it feels like you just said, it was just last summer. Like it's gonna come around again super fast.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's that weird feeling of like, oh crap, time is moving really fast.
Well, I mean,
I'll get to it.
even in a way, it is a reason. Like I called one of my friends yesterday and I was like, so I've determined that because of our kids' sports schedule, we will never see each other again unless we like, and we just saw each other and it was for so fast and it wasn't long enough. And so I was like, like we have to pick a day. And now we're at the point that like maybe it's going to be like midweek because otherwise we could be missing up to like 6 to 8 sports games on a weekend if we missed a weekend.
Yeah.
Between the two of us. And so but I was just like, if we don't get something on the calendar, and we used to be better at it, but now that we each have 3 kids and now that the youngest are doing sports as well, it's just like there's no hole.
Yeah.
There's no
There's no
space.
gap.
So I'm basically going to be to later this weekend, like sending her a list of every weekend that I could meet with her, barring the fact that we don't know any of the sports weekends. But give or take every weekend I can meet with her between now and the end of the year.
Right.
And we're just going to find one. And if we don't find one, we're going to meet on like a Wednesday night. Like, and she lives far away, so it's an overnight and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I do think, and this kind of goes to this idea of sometimes what holds us back. And it's been interesting as I watch my kids, and this is something that we haven't talked about, actually. Nothing like bringing up something brand new that I haven't even talked to you about before, in the last episode, but that I feel like kids really experience. I feel like there's almost like a curve, right? So like the beginning of your life, you're very rule bound. Like, this is how things have to be. And I just had a conversation, and I don't remember like any of the context of the conversation. It was with my son, but it was he basically asked if it was okay to throw a shower for somebody. And I don't know what the context was. And I don't even remember if it was a baby or a bridal shower. And I was like, you can literally do whatever you want. Like, there's not, I mean, listen, we've all gone through these wedding times of our lives and shower times, and there are an immense number of rules that people assign to these events.
Yes.
But they aren't actually real rules, right?
Right.
Like, they're like pretend rules. And so you actually can do whatever you want. If you want to celebrate somebody, you can celebrate them. Like, and he was like, oh. I was like, yeah. And I feel like a lot of times, both if you're not careful, both at the beginning and closer to the end of your life, there's a lot of rules that you make yourself have to follow.
Yeah.
And there are certainly people who don't that doesn't happen to as they get older. But I think like maybe I'm in the wild middle where it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, none of it matters. And I don't mean that in a throw it all up in the air, it doesn't matter way, but I mean, like, isn't it great? Like, it just doesn't, those rules don't matter. And it could be the influence of like the end times being so near that we're just like, it doesn't matter. The world is burning. You can smell Canada from here. I don't know, but we haven't really we've talked about perfectionism holding us back.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about societal influences holding us back. But I do sometimes think there's this like other weird, well, that's just not how we do it, that can hold us back. And it's not maybe it's a voice in your head, maybe it's society, but maybe it's just like these weird stories we tell ourselves. And I did the research for this one, and it's you're gonna be like, wait, there was research in this, and there was. I did a lot of reading about two big things, right? So we're going to talk about the next season, but then also talking about this season and talking about like how to even figure out what might be holding us back, right? Like, because that's like step number one. And I actually think, based on my reading and my life experience, and all of us talking about this for the last 18, 19 weeks, what is actually a possibility of what is holding us back? Like, the first thing is identifying that you're being held back, right? Like, that's step one. And I sometimes think that is all you have to do, is be like, oh, that's not really a thing I have to follow. That doesn't need to hold me back. Oh, okay. Right. Like, sometimes it actually is that easy.
Yes.
I
think like, often it's that easy, right? Like, where you're just like, wait, I was doing that because why?
Yeah.
Because I thought I had to, and I realized I don't have to. And then suddenly you're unleashed, right? You're like, oh, I can go do whatever.
You're unlocked.
Unlocked.
There you go. But yeah, it's like a made up, right?
Yeah. And it's a societal construct, right? And it's whether you have been telling yourself the story all your life, somebody else has, your family dynamic has, whatever, some combination of all of it, most likely. And then you get stuck in those patterns. And how often have you found yourself like only buying one kind of cereal because that's the kind of cereal you ate when you were a kid and you were told that was the cereal to eat, and so you've never tried a different kind of cereal? I mean, that's a very silly example, but I think it happens.
No, I mean, we've talked about, you and I think we're talking about this in relation to politics, how so many people just take on their parents' politics, and then they don't even realize that they've taken all their parents' politics. But I think, a lot of times you're like, oh, I don't have to do it that way. I notice it sometimes. It's one of the reasons when I walk through the park or go for walks that I intentionally, almost habitually, but not quite, walk like reverse routes through the park, because I don't want there to be like, this is how I always go. And part of that is for safety, not so much in the park, but just in general when you're running.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is just like, no, you don't have to go that way. Like you can go the other way. And it like keeps your mind a little more nimble almost. But I do think it's important to say like, what is holding you back? And then sometimes I do the reverse of a route and I'm like, oh no, I never go this way because this way the big hill is up as opposed to down, like there was a reason. It wasn't habits. It was because this is a big hill.
I made a good choice before and I forgot about it.
Yeah. But I think I think knowing that something's holding you back, knowing that you're having a feeling or there's a problem. And I thought something interesting in what I read, and I find this to be really fascinating, is they didn't have the first step be accept there's a problem, accept you're having a big feeling. It was know what your go-to numbing behaviors are. And I thought that was like, whoa, because often that's a step farther down.
Yeah.
And even when I was arranging, because I read a bunch of articles and I was kind of arranging some of these different steps, and I was like, no, numbing behaviors is farther along. And I was like, no, it's not, because sometimes the only indication that you're having a problem is you're having numbing behaviors.
Right.
Or it's another reason that it's really important to get to know your body. Because I think a lot of times, like you and I are like, I can't take deep breaths. And so I'm like, maybe I'm anxious. Maybe there's smoke from Canada. Who's to know? Like, I don't know. Maybe I just ate like too much for breakfast. Like I definitely ate too much for breakfast and it was delicious. But like, we had strawberry shortcake last night. So I had leftovers for breakfast. But there I think it's really important to know what are your numbing behaviors. And I know for me, and I think, well, we can get to this or we can just talk about it right now. Like there's a difference between numbing and healthy distraction. Like,
yeah.
And it's, for example, you and I were talking last week and I think I said, I'm currently, or like 2 weeks ago, I was like, I'm currently in my anxiety level is like Regency romance. Like that is because I know that like at some point I can't read books where I don't know that there's a happy ending. Right. Yeah. If things are stressful, if life's a little too stressful, if there's anxiety happening, if I just need to figure out my way about what's going on, I need the happy ending. And like within about 4 pages of any good Regency romance, who's going to end up together. And they probably don't like each other.
Right. Right. It's a fairly formulaic experience.
Yeah. And so like, to me, so sometimes they're used as not so much a distraction, but a way to get away, right? And it's a safe place to go. If I wasn't aware of what they were, then they could be numbing, or they could be something that I'm doing to ignore a problem, as opposed to as a healthy distraction where I'm like, yep, I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to have my big emotions, but I also need a time where I'm not having those big emotions.
Yeah. We do need to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to just talk about like typical numbing behaviors so that people understand exactly what you're referring to. So we'll be right back, everyone. Hey, Tova, you know what I love?
Coffee, definitions, uninterrupted reading time.
Okay, all of those things are true, but I also love maps.
As in Siri, take me to the beach?
Yeah. Also, as in, who am I really and who do I want to be?
Yeah, I figured that's what you meant, but I also have the beach on my mind, so...
Well, we were talking about things we love, so that definitely makes sense. But the map I was thinking about is our Defining You course.
Yes. We put together Defining You as a way to map where you are and how you want to live your life.
So true. So many people struggle to find their purpose in a busy and noisy world.
That's why we made Defining You, our course meant to guide you to creating your own mission statement.
And there's good news. You can get it now on teachable.com. Find the link on our website at goboldlyinitiative.com/courses, or check out the link on our Instagram bio at Go Boldly Together.
We can't wait to see you there. Now, let's head back to the show.
Okay, welcome back to the show. So before our break, we were talking about numbing behaviors. And I think this is a really important topic. And I think a lot of us don't even realize that we're doing numbing behaviors, right? Like if you are sitting in front of the television for a couple hours and you're just relaxing, probably not a numbing behavior. But if you spend every moment of free time sitting in front of the television and not attending to the rest of the world in any meaningful way, that's probably a numbing behavior, right? So that's the difference. It's a time, it's a quality of time, it's purpose, it's all of those things behind the behavior. So like the obvious ones, of course, are drugs, alcohol, sex, food. Those are like the very obvious sort of numbing tools that people use, but there's a million different ones. Like, yeah, you were saying about the Regency romance, but if all you ever did was read Regency romance and never like engaged with your children or something, things like that, that's a more extreme use of the distraction, and maybe it's become a numbing behavior. So I think the danger of numbing behaviors is that they can become addictions. They can become they're crutches for your life that are not necessarily healthy ones at that point. They might have started off healthy, but if you've gone beyond the point of them being healthy, it's important to sort of start to take time and recognize that. I know we've all, I'm sure, gotten caught up in certain things that have allowed us to escape from whatever everyday nonsense is driving us crazy. I mean, as parents, as people, as partners, as employees or employers or whatever we are, all those things, it's inevitable that you get overwhelmed and overstimulated and exhausted and you need a break. It's just the question is, how far are you taking that break? And I know for myself, like I've had months where I'm like, oh no, what have I just done? I spent all this time, reading, or I spent all this time writing and not paying any attention to anything else. And that had gone a little too far. So you have to sort of pull yourself back from the brink, so to speak, in those instances.
Well, and I think that's why for a lot of times, or for this one article, knowing your numbing behaviors is a great first step, because you're like, oh, wow, what did I do last month? I didn't really get anything done. I read all these books. What am I ignoring? Like, what is going on? And sometimes you're ignoring a problem, and sometimes you're ignoring 10 problems, and sometimes you're ignoring feelings. And so I think that, it is a great first step, and it is an important one to help figure out, and unlock what is holding you back. Is something holding you back? and what could it be? And holding you back from what? Holding you back from setting big goals, holding you back from feeling your feelings, holding you back from whatever it might be. And I think that, we're excited to move on. I mean, we love this season, but we're excited to move on to our next season. And a lot of it relies on us allowing ourselves to feel our feelings. And excuse me, I think that is, the next step. Okay, you're not numbing yourself, but now you have to figure out what you're feeling. Are you afraid? Are you nervous? Are you anxious? Are you angry? Are you frustrated? Like, what is the feeling that you're having, and where is it coming from? Because that's like the next step in figuring out what might be holding you back. Because then you can figure out, like, this is my feeling. I'm not going to judge my feeling. It's okay. I'm not going to be afraid of my feelings. But I am going to figure out what my feelings are, what they actually are. And I know I've talked about this before, but I've talked to my boys a lot about how anger is such a good cover of other feelings. And it's hard because sometimes anger is a feeling on its own. And we all have the right to be angry, and we should be allowed to be angry. And that's a whole other conversation that we've had, actually. But also it's often a cover. I mean, today in my car, dropping off the kids at camp, my 11-year-old just got very angry. He lashed out, called me a name to the point that I was like, you may not speak anymore. I need a minute. And he was like, whoop, whoop. And I'm like, nope, 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 nope. None of us are speaking because I will say something that I don't want to say. Because like you should not have called me a name, but also I am not going to call you a name back as long as you don't keep speaking. I can only maintain my adultness for so long.
Yeah, we all have limits on that.
Right. Like you just and I got out of the car, I took it, and he was like, it was funny because he wanted to tell his brother something. I was like, no, you're not gonna talk to anybody. Nobody's talking right now. And I walked his brother into his camp and I walked out. And when I sat down, I said, okay, what would you like to tell me? And the feelings underneath the lashing out were hurt and sadness and frustration and a variety of feelings, right? And so that is why it's so important to feel those feelings, figure out what they are, and then not judge them. Because I am not a perfect parent. In fact, I did a meditation this morning because I was feeling extra not perfect. But had I only reacted to the anger and been like, you just called me a name, you lose this, you lose that, I never would have gotten to the underneath feelings, the ones that are actually the important ones. And I think it's important for us to treat ourselves the same way. Like, we cannot come at ourselves with judgment.
Yes.
Because we have to let our feelings be what they are.
Right.
We know they're not facts. We know they're not our reactions to the feelings. But we're allowed to have them, and we need to have them. We need to have them so we can figure out what's happening in our lives. And we need to have them so we can, as we're going to talk about in a couple minutes, like feed our spirit and feed our soul. We need to know what's making us tick.
Yeah. So like you just said, feeding our spirit and soul is essential to living a happy life, living a contented life, whatever adjective you want to put in there to explain what kind of life you want to have. You have to be able to work through those things and feelings and experiences and situations that are holding you back in order to get to the place where you know how to feed your spirit and feed your soul. And so all of this leads us to our next season. And our next season is stemming from a conversation I had with a woman who we met at the Mom 2.0 conference in Scottsdale, Arizona last spring. And so I was talking to her and she asked me, how is your heart? And I was like, totally taken aback because, who's ever asked you that?
And I just want to just interject too. It wasn't, we weren't like mid conversation. We were like, hey, how's it going? It was like the last afternoon maybe. And we were like, so it wasn't like we weren't having a deep conversation when she asked us that. So it was like, whoa.
Yeah. Yes. It was actually the second time. That was the second time she asked me the same question. And it both times sort of blew my mind because when is the last time you sat down and thought to yourself, how is my heart? And I don't just mean like physically. I don't mean like, how are you physically feeling? I mean, how are you spiritually? How is your soul feeling? How are you feeling fulfilled, contented, joy, all of those things? Or are you not feeling those things? But have you done an inventory lately? Have you looked inside deeply and thought about that question? I hadn't. I mean, I had, but not really, right? Like I had, but not enough to the point where when somebody asked me the question, I would just be like, oh, it's blah, 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 blah. I was like, oh, damn, I don't know. let me stop and think. What am I doing that is feeding my soul? What am I doing that's feeding my spirit? And I personally, and I'm sure a lot of other people have this experience, but I definitely go through ups and downs, right? Like where sometimes I do well, maybe not all, but a lot of the things I need to do in order to feel connected and in tune and in touch with who I am at my core. And then there's other times where I lose that connection and I'm like, oh, what's happening? I don't know. And it goes up and down for me. And it's not particularly consistent in the sense that like 6 months of the year I'm one way and 6 months I'm another way. It's, it comes and goes, and it's very much dependent on my intentionality and my focus and purpose in my life. And so our next season is entirely focused on that question of how is your heart? And we're going to dive into kind of all the nuances of what that means, what it looks like, how you can even start to address that question if we've asked it and you're like, oh my God, I don't know. Don't feel bad. Lots of us have that experience. It's, we're going to work on it through the season, and we're going to hopefully have guests on who will help you consider it from all different perspectives and what it means to them, and that will resonate with you guys. But, being able to step back and think about what is feeding my soul? Like, have I just been sort of going through life on autopilot and not even noticing? Or am I somewhere in between? Am I meditating? Am I getting out in nature? Am I, spending really quality time with my family? Am I having a one-on-one time with my kids or my parents or my spouse or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever? What am I doing every day that actually leads me to feel connected to my own spiritual being? And whether that's religious for you or not is irrelevant, right? Like, it's still the same question. And we want to sort of examine that from as many sides as humanly possible. So if you have ideas of how you want us to talk about that or think about it, let us know. You can always reach out to us and send us, ways in which you would think about it so that we can add that into our research for the next season. But I'm excited to talk about this. I think it's going to be a hard topic and possibly painful at times, right? Because there's some things in there that are hard to examine. Like, if you're still stuck in the past and not able to get over, wrongs that have been done to you or trauma in your life, not that you get over trauma, but, move through trauma. If you're still stuck in that mired down feeling, it's very hard to feed your soul. It's very hard to find joy and find contentment and all those things. So it might be a little painful, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I'm excited for it, particularly because I need it. And if you're sitting here going, well, that was a quick turn. Like, what does like figuring out what your feelings are and feeding your soul have to do with each other? So I went to bed last night feeling like pretty frustrated. I don't know. I was frustrated with my kids. I was frustrated with mostly though with myself and my reaction to my kids, and just like, my kids asked me for help with something, and like, yes, they need to learn patience, but also like, I was like, I just want to do this one more thing on my computer. Like, I had run them around all afternoon and it was into the evening. I just opened up my computer to do a tiny bit of work, which, I mean, we're talking 20 minutes or less, but like, it got drawn out then and it was a whole thing and I was annoyed, and then they were looking for something and the puzzles went everywhere. And I had no patience, and I don't know how much they felt it. I mean, I did do something which I've been trying to do, which is give them like a really good hug at the end of every night. Cause sometimes my oldest will just be like, okay, I'm going to bed. And then I'm like, bye, where'd you go? Which is kind of amazing, but also like, I'm like, but I didn't hug you yet. So I'm making a bigger point of doing that. But all of this is to say, when I went to bed last night, my first thought wasn't like, my first thought was, you need to be more patient. But then my second thought was like, but what was the struggle yesterday? Like, what are the issues? And one thing is, I know I haven't been meditating. And so I haven't been feeding my soul, but I was not always perfect at this or good at this even, but I was able to be like, okay, my feeling is frustration and a lack of patience. My reactions are lack of patience. I'm not going to judge that. I mean, I'm going to judge it a little, but I'm not going to judge it enough that I can't figure it out. And then what do I need to do? And so that is sort of the connection, right? Like, I mean, we've had almost entire seasons talking about feelings, but it is so important to figure out, what are you feeling, so that you can figure out what is holding you back. And we just had a whole season. So if you're like, oh, this is holding me back, go listen to that episode. And then, you need to know those feelings. So you need to know what is feeding your soul. What does feed your soul? And if you ask that question to the internet, you will find there are many, many suggestions. as ways to feed your whole soul. This is definitely the realm of the 25 things to feed your soul.
Yeah.
Like 33 things to feed your soul, which we included in the resources. But
I do want to just say before we get on to that topic, I think it's important to remember that the things that are holding you back are blocking you from feeding your soul. Right? If something is holding you back, it's a block. It's like a hurdle you need to get, excuse me, you need to get over, or something you need to move through or work through, or, let go of, or all those phrases, whatever one applies to your particular block. But that block is keeping you from feeding your soul. It's very hard to stay connected through meditation, right? If there's something else getting in your way, telling you don't deserve that time, or you're not allowed to take that time, or you can't possibly fit it in your schedule because it's so full of all these other things you've committed to doing, right? So until you work through those blocks and get to the other side of them, it's very hard to even if you do know what feeds your soul, it's very hard to do the things that feed your soul. And I say that from deeply personal experience of going through that so many times. So I have so much empathy for anyone else who has that feeling of like, I know what I need to do. I'm stuck. I'm stuck in this space where either I don't know how to make myself do it, which I don't like to say it that way, but it feels that way. Or I don't know how to allow myself the space to do these things, right? Like exercise or meditate, or all the things we're about to talk about in terms of how does one feed one's soul, the 85 different ways that the Google wants to tell us to do it. But yeah, I just think it's important for everyone to understand that the two seasons are deeply connected. It's just one sort of holds up the other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense to me, but
right.
No, I hope it does make sense. And I think you're right. I think so many of the things, if you are unlocking what holds you back, you're going to be able to unlock what is preventing you from feeding your soul. And a lot of the things go hand in hand. And I will say, and then we'll take a quick break, and we'll come back to talk about some things that maybe you can do in preparation for our season. And we'll talk a little bit about what our plan is for the next couple of weeks. But I liked these lists more than the normal lists. I'm not going to lie. They had fun ideas, right? Like, this can be fun. And the topics that we're going to discuss are going to be hard, but also there should be, I hate using the word should, but I don't know a good word right now. There can be joy in figuring out how to feed your soul. There can be laughter. It can be fun.
Yes.
So I think, so let's just take one more quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about maybe some things that might help feed your soul and what our plans are for the next couple weeks.
In case you didn't already know, we love talking.
True story. More than simply talking, we love researching, prepping, and bringing this podcast to life.
We launched We Go Boldly with the goal of reaching people dealing with the kinds of questions and concerns that we also face.
Things like how to hear my inner voice, how to make sure my habits are worth it and stick, how do I feel my feelings and still manage to function.
After years of personal work and lots of trial and error, we realized we have a lot to share on these topics.
Now we've been broadcasting for over a year, and we are proud of our podcast.
And to no one's surprise, we still have a lot to say and talk about.
We sure do. We need your help to keep going. Every episode takes time and money to create, and we would love your support.
So, if you like what we are doing, please support us by joining our Patreon community and becoming a monthly subscriber.
Join our Patreon community today at patreon.com/wegoboldly. We are so grateful to all of our supporters. Now, back to the show. welcome back. Welcome back. Like I said, there were a lot of lists online that you can find about different ways to feed your soul. And I spent a lot of time thinking I was going to include them. And I was like, yeah, nobody actually wants us to read a list of 25 things. You can Google yourself and find how to feed my soul. But I will say there were some things that I thought were totally that I loved. Like there was one eat lunch outside, and or just take like a midday walk or something. But the theory is that like the lights that you have, the indoor lights, especially the fluorescent lights, is like bad for your mood, like physically bad for your emotional state. And there was a whole study attached to it looking at it. And so just like, obviously, you know, there's this precarious balance between skin cancer and vitamin D consumption. But like, and I don't know how to walk that, to be perfectly honest, but getting out in natural light in the middle of the day is a way to feed your soul. And that's kind of what I just, that was an example, but there was so like, one was like, go fishing. Like they were just, you know, smell the outdoors. I mean, there was just like, they were all kind of just a little weird, and I really enjoyed them all.
Those are my favorite kinds of activities. Just a little weird.
I know. They were just like, well, because a lot of things it's like go outside, but these were like, go outside and smell the air. And I'm like, yes, I like it.
I do too.
And so I didn't include those, but because a list that I found, and I want to say it was from Oprah, but it could have been from somewhere else. I could be making that up. Talked about big things that we can do to feed our soul. And you are not going to be surprised that the first thing on the list is practicing gratitude, because it is always the best thing to do for all the times. And I know we don't like to use words like always and best and all, but I'm just using them because
in this instance, I think it's a reasonable use of the terms always and forever.
Yeah. And so but I liked the fact also though they separated the difference between appreciation and gratitude. And I often mix them together. And so I'm like, I should be really grateful for this wonderful cup of coffee, which yes, let's be grateful for that. But I liked this idea of appreciation. And I'm going to just quote it directly because it said, it is noticing the gentle breeze, the faint smile, the fragrant scent, the sharp, pungent taste, the silence, and recognizing the full value of each moment of life and all that life has to offer. And listen, we are moms of kids who are like in full kid mode. We recognize that that is not possible, but it is not impossible to recognize a breeze. Like, especially we've had some very hot days, and each night we've gotten a nice breeze, which has been great because guess where I've been? A baseball game. And the breeze has been amazing. But just, I think, and I think gratitude helps you appreciate these things, but I think it's okay if you just focus on noticing them sometimes.
Yeah. You know what I like is, so we've had super hot weather lately, and I was at a 4-hour swim with no shade yesterday in 100 degrees. And I thought I was going to expire from that experience. But as you were just talking, there were a few moments where there was like a nice breeze that actually gave me some relief from the bucketing sweat that was happening. And I noticed it. Right. And then today, when you said what you just said, it reminded me of it. And I was like, yeah, that was great. That was such a relief. And that's the recall process that helps you build gratitude. The fact that I noticed it in the moment and was appreciative of it, fine, great. But it's the next day where I go, oh, I'm so grateful that happened. And I can remember it and think about it and hold that feeling of gratitude inside me that I had those few moments, even if I didn't realize it at the time, where I was just, like I've made it a habit to notice these things.
Well, and I think that, so your word of the year is intention.
Intentional, those all derivatives.
And, my word is acceptance, accept what is happening in the world, in my life. Like just which, I mean, it's like, that's your word, really, Tova? It's just like, nope, just accepting what the status quo is and what is like. But I think both of those words rely on being engaged in your lives. And to me, that is about noticing the small things. And I think sometimes noticing the small things get overshadowed by the cheesiness of like the small things are really the big things. And like that might be true, but it's really annoying, like to hear
Right.
people say
Right. But it's
it.
also not the thing that is the big thing. It's the feeling attached to the thing, right? Like
Yeah.
the very short story I just told about the swim meet and the breeze and the whatever, and then feeling it the next day of gratitude. That's the big thing. It's that I have that sense of gratitude. It's not that there was a breeze on a hot day at a swim meet. It's
Right.
that feeling of gratitude that the universe like gave me a breeze. I mean, it didn't give it to you know what I mean, but it's that's the
I
part.
mean, maybe,
I mean, maybe it
maybe
did. I
she
don't know.
did.
I can manifest a lot of stuff. Um,
Um, yes. And I think there's also, this is going to sound so circular, but there's joy to be had in the noticing of things, right? So, like, have you ever had like a moment, and usually for me, it's like a very brief moment where like all my kids are happily playing together. And I'm just like, what is going on? But
yeah,
then I'm always so happy that I noticed it.
yeah,
And I try to like stop moving for a second and just be like, just soak it in, Tova. Just make this a core memory. Make it a core memory so that this is what you remember when they're older and you're older. And you're like, remember how you guys used to play so well together? And you could just block the rest out.
right,
And like, but there's like joy in noticing these things. And
yeah.
so like there's joy in you being like, yeah, that was a nice breeze. Like, and
No, there
it's
is, and it's a feeling of gratitude that like nests inside your soul, and that is feeding your soul because you
yes,
recognize that there are things in the world to be grateful for, in addition to all the garbage, right? Like, yeah, all the garbage is still there; it hasn't changed, but you can find gratitude, and you can find it in moments like this, right? Like in these, as you just said, these small things that become big things because it's really not about the thing. It doesn't matter. It could have been a breeze. It could have been somebody gave me ice water. Could have been I fell into the pool, you know, which would have been
you're like, I wish it
delightful.
fell into the pool.
But
Yeah.
it could be anything. It's the feeling that matters.
Yeah. No, 100%. Um, I would, and this is why I'm so excited to have these conversations now, because I do think that over the next 6 to 8 weeks, people have a lot of family time coming,
Mm.
usually. And so it's important to figure out how you're going to approach said family time, so that it leaves you joyful and refreshed, at
Or
least a little.
at least sane, right?
Yep, yep. But I've also liked one of the other things that was listed was love being necessary to feed your soul. And I like how they talk about how love is a core human need, but that it takes so many forms, right? So it can be self-love. It can be like romantic love, but it also can be the joy and happiness you get from taking care of something that you love. And this is going to sound I don't know what this is going to sound like, but like my dad is really good at what do you do with silver? You like clean it, but
You
maybe there's
polish it.
polish it.
Yeah.
I don't find any enjoyment in that. In fact, the polisher I have has this pungent smell that I'm like, well, they'll just be brown, black, I don't care forever. But I think my dad really likes well, he really likes to clean things and he's very good at it. But he also like so when he polishes candles, I think there's some like a little love for the candles, a little love for the experience. There's also love for like making the house nicer for the people in his lives. There's the experience of like, my stepmom likes the candles to sparkle. Like there's like so much that goes into that, but it's just this little moment. And I think that there is a lot of soul feeding that takes place from acts of love. And there's a lot of conversations, whether it's on like TikTok or the whatever's the reels, um, about like the love languages.
Yeah.
But I think that it is really important to find out what your love languages are. I know for me, I'm always embarrassed to say this, and I don't know why, but like gifts are definitely one of my love languages, but it's not like it doesn't have anything to do with the price of the gift. Like I know a couple, maybe last year or the year before, this sort of like anonymous group of women lawyers on the internet sent me a mug because I was just having a rough day. And like now, this is like a year or two later. If I'm having a rough day, I think about that mug and like that random act of kindness and how nice it was. And something similar happened where a friend sent me, she knew one of my goals was to laugh more. And she knew I was going through like, it was a time where I was getting like a biopsy and it was just like a ooh, kind of time. And she sent me a book about funny women. And like that happened like years ago. But now, if I'm having a particularly stressful time, I'm like, remember that time when they did that? That was so nice. And so, like, for me, that's the kind of gift that I like. Like, it's not like a diamonds or whatever. Um, so I think it is really important to know what your love language is and your love languages. Maybe it's all of the things. I don't know. I mean, I think it's great, you know.
I think it is all of the things for everyone.
Yeah.
It's just which one is the most significant for you, right? Like
Yeah.
you could tell me you love me 18,000 times and I'll be like, okay, that's nice. But if you know, clean up my house or show up with food or, you know, make me dinner and do the dishes or clean. Did I mention cleaning? I love a cleaning person. If you do things for me that make my life easier and you're
Yeah.
conscientious about it, right? Like that's my love language. And my husband's the opposite. If I don't tell him I love him repeatedly all the time, he's like, "Wait, what's happening?" Right? Like we're just opposite people. He doesn't care if I clean or not. I mean, I think he would eventually. Um, but that's not how he receives love. And it's important to understand that about yourself so that you're
Yes.
not feeling neglected or feeling like, you know, like you're not getting what you need in life. And this is a little off topic, I guess. I'm veering off a little bit, but I do think it's super important to remember like we all need to feed our souls and we need to do that through as everything we've been talking about, but love is so intensely important. And
Yeah.
I think more important than any other type of love is self-love. And it's the hardest type for most of us. Some people not hard, which I'm always impressed and amazed by. But for the rest of us mere mortals, it can be really hard to show ourselves love. And if you figure out how you receive love, it's much easier to show yourself love.
Well, and I think that, you know, once again, to tie these two topics, these two seasons together, that can be something that holds you back, right? Is not knowing what you need
Yeah.
and not knowing what you need, like love wise. Like I did not realize that. I mean, I don't know that touch is one of my love language favorites. I don't know where it ranks in the list of them. And we've already established that warm beverages are like way at, or really any
Top.
beverages, just like
Top.
way at the top. But like when we were in COVID and everything got locked down, and I realized that my only physical touch was like up to that point, other than my kids, which they were very much at the age where it was like a taking sort of love. They were like 8, 6, and 4,
Yep.
and in taking sort of touching,
Mm-hmm.
like they weren't. And now they've actually like my 7-year-old knows how much, for whatever reason, I love when somebody puts their hand on my forehead, which, by the way, if you're not watching on YouTube, I'm now putting my hand on my forehead. But like A, it feels really good when I have a migraine for whatever reason, and B, I just like it. So he'll do that. Like he will just snuggle with me and he'll just sit there, we'll watch TV, and he just puts his hand on my forehead. And it is like, I think, you know, Riley, you would probably be like, why are you touching me? But
Oh
like, yeah, this is why it's important to know what you need.
I do not
um,
need to be touched, in case anyone's
yeah, and
wondering.
right. Whereas like my older son has realized like I'm always like a tornado when we're leaving the house and I get in the car, and he's learned that he just can like put his hand on my arm. That's it. And then I'm like immediately like, whew, now I'm cooled down because we made it to the car and I'm okay.
Right.
And like, it's awesome. These are awesome things. These are things that I've learned about myself because I've thanked him. I like, you know, that was actually really effective. I appreciate that. And so it all goes together. We are rapidly running out of time, but
Yes.
two other things that are just so important, and they're so important to me, and they're important to feeding your soul, are laughter and joy. And
Mm-hmm.
this is literally laughing. There are physiological changes when you smile, when you laugh, when your muscles relax. It helps release tension. Like it was described, I saw, as being compared to a mild workout. Like it is physically good for you to do these things.
Yeah.
And then joy is about celebrating. So like, let's celebrate things this summer. We are mid-July as you're listening to this, hopefully, and let's just take some time to celebrate whatever we can. Like whatever we can. I know recently Riley and I passed a milestone with the number of like downloads for our podcast, and I forgot to say something, and it was like 2 weeks later I was like, oh, by the way, we need to celebrate that. I mean, who cares if you're late? Celebrate it.
Yeah, it's never too late to celebrate something. I think. But, and I just want to note in the laughter aspect, right? Like also laugh at yourself, right? Laugh at the things that you do that are ridiculous. Laugh at your mistakes. Laugh at your accidents. I mean, obviously there are things we don't laugh at, but like my parents came with us on this vacation we were just on, and we went out on this, essentially it's like a bounce house on a lake, so a death trap for old people like me. And my kids wanted to go out there, and my husband and everybody wanted to go out, and it was great. And we went last year as well with my daughter, but this was my son's first time going, so he challenged my mom. He was like, Grandma, I don't think you can do it. And so of course my mom was like, oh yeah, little child, of course I can do it. So we went out on this, it's called a wee bit, but It's like a bouncy floating thing in a lake, and it's so terrifying and slippery and hard, like a full body workout to get on this thing. My mother ran all over this bounce house thing, and I mean, I did it too, but like she was just laughing hysterically as she was falling over, as she was getting knocked into the lake, as she was, sliding down slides, and my husband launched her off a launch pad. It was like the most hilarious experience I've had in months. And we were just laughing at ourselves and our silliness. And it was so gratifying. And that is a core memory that I will now have. And my kids will have it too, which is fantastic. And they saw us laughing at ourselves as we fell over and tripped and got knocked down by small children and all the things. So just, you got to laugh at yourself and the things you do, because if we take ourselves so seriously all the time, there is no joy. There's no joy in that.
Yeah. Yeah, it all goes together. So we are really excited for the season. It is not going to be all fun and games, but we're going to try to make it fun. Before we get there, we are going to have a mini season coming to you over the next 2 weeks. And that season is going to focus on sort of an issue that, I don't say issue, something that was going to, I don't know, that has just been weighing on us a lot and is a big part of our lives. And we decided, as opposed to integrating it into a different season, we just thought we would have some conversations about it on its own. And so we are going to be talking about living with neurodiversity, how it affects your families, how it affects your kids, if it's them, if it's you, just sort of a wide range of conversations around that idea. Did I capture it well?
Yeah, we're also going to talk about mental health, and we're going to talk about how challenging it is to struggle with your mental health, particularly now after COVID, when there's very few providers available to help people. And sort of how that impacts family dynamics, how it comes into play in your jobs, things like that. We're going to dive into all the nitty-gritty of mental health and how it comes into play in our lives and in the lives of the people around us.
Yeah, so hold on to this happy episode. And no, it'll be a good conversation. We're going to be putting it over 2 weeks. And then we will be touching base at the beginning of August. And then I think we're going to be taking a little bit of a break.
Yeah, we're gonna feed our souls with a break. Yeah. So it all ties together. Just, when you ask yourself as you're getting ready for our next season, how is your heart? Remember, sometimes you need a break, right? Like you need time to yourself. You need to refuel, whatever it is. You need that energy boosting experience to help you come back and be, your authentic self. So that's what we're doing. And I think we both feel like it's very important for us as a company, as coaches, as people, as humans in the world to sort of walk the walk. And we tell you all to rest. We tell you all to take care of yourselves, to do self-care. So we are going to engage in a bit of that for ourselves this summer.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to give you a little homework that is kind of like a long-term project, because I think it's something that we can work on throughout the summer. And the first question we have for you is, do you practice feeling your emotions, right? So are you aware of what emotions you're having? Are you aware of what your numbing techniques are? Are you using them healthy, like a healthy distraction that lets you take a break from what you need so you can come back to it a little more refreshed? Or are you just ignoring everything and putting them in a box? So these are questions for you to ask yourself about your emotional well-being. Either think about them, write them down, and maybe just start being aware of how you deal with your emotions. I think some of us don't have any idea how we do it. And when we realize, we're like, oh, so step one is to figure that out. And then step two of our homework is think about how you are going to nourish your heart and your soul between now and Labor Day weekend. What do you have planned to make sure that you are doing that? And if you're like, listen, my vacation was last week, I don't have anything. Notice that we never talked about vacations, right? We're talking about moments. We're talking about whether it's meditation or reading, finding joy, finding laughter. It might mean that you download, like there's this laughing app that I absolutely love called LMAO. And maybe you download a funny joke app. There's lots of different ways to do these that they do not require, cruise ships. So that is what we have given you to do, what we're going to be trying to do over the next couple months. And otherwise, though, we'll be back next week talking about mental health, neurodiversity, and how it affects you and your family.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much for listening to We Go Boldly podcast. We know you're busy and we love spending time with you.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, let us know. Head to Apple Podcasts right now to rate and review our show. While you're there, be sure to click that subscribe button.
Want more us time? Follow us on all the socials at Go Boldly Together.
Want even more us time? As in all the coaching pizzazz. Find us at goboldlyinitiative.com for all the info.
We will be back with more excitement, research, and deep thoughts next week.
Until then, keep on being the bold, brave, amazing people we know you already are.